This is 24 in 42. Welcome to 24 in 42. I'm your host, Jason Waltz, and today we get to sit down with Gary Thomas, who is world renowned for all of the information he shares with us on multiple sources of pulp, horror, fantasy, science fiction, all the good stuff. Gary, tell us what you write.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's G.W. Thomas is the byline, but yeah, you're right. It is Gary. I basically am a monster guy. I like any genre that's got monsters in it. So science fiction, fantasy, horror, bit of weird mystery, anything that's got the creepy crawlies.
Very good. My apologies on the GW.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's a good way to do it.
All right.
It's just that my URL is gwthomas.org.
Correct. Yep. You and I have interacted a lot together, but we've never actually been in the same thing together, other than you did contribute an excellent essay to the Hither Came Conan collection that came out last year and recently won the Howard Award from the Foundation in June.
Learned.
So I will be scattering pictures throughout our conversation. So if you have props to hold up or whatever you talk about, I'll be writing down here.
Okay.
All right. So as we're getting familiar, I've shared 16 of the 24 questions with the author so that they were able to put a little thought into some of their answers. The other 8 are tongue-in-cheek, not too in-depth questions. And we're going to start this timer over here and see how Gary and I do today. Here we go. Number 1. What color do you write in?
Color do I write in? That is a strange question. I would say probably shades of gray.
That's getting...
Yeah, I don't really have anything for that one. Sorry.
No, that's a spot on the... or question on the spot question. All right, here's the serious one. How do you give depth to your characters, and do you treat first, second, third level characters differently?
Well, my writing process for fiction hasn't really changed over the years, though I have noticed as I've gotten older, I do actually include more character stuff in them. So I would just say it's experience. That's really the one where they say you need to have some experience to be a writer. I think that mostly shows up either in character or setting.
Okay. Do you think there's a difference, or do you invest the same across the board, no matter how minor the character is?
No, I would definitely. Well, actually, to be honest, I do most of my character building in dialogue. So it comes out in what they say and how they say it. I'm not one for long explanations, or expository paragraphs. It's usually very subtle, very quick, but hopefully very telling. Okay. There's that little comment that only that kind of person would make, or only that age of person would think. So
True.
It's subtle.
Okay. All right. So did you grow up a city or a country kid? And wherever it was, when you played out your adventures, did you have friends, or was it just you?
I'm a town kid. So parents are from the farm, so I knew the farm. I had cousins that lived in the city who didn't really go there a lot. So I grew up on town, but I always lived on the edge of town. My dad, for some reason, always bought a house on the edge of town. So I always had lots of woods to play in.
Cool.
And so that's where I would, of course, play out my games, I guess. And I would always try and include others, but I was okay by myself too.
Did you read in the woods?
Not a lot.
Okay. I used to climb a tree when I couldn't find anyone to adventure with and read in a tree.
Yeah, the trees in Canada are not so climbable.
Okay.
It's pretty hard to climb up in a pine or a spruce tree.
Sticky, right?
Yeah, no really good limbs, so all kind of hangs down. No, I quite am fond of doing my writing when I'm walking, though. Like when I walk my dog is when I do most of my writing. And I love to do that as much in nature as possible.
Okay, literally writing or dictating?
Well, in my head, figuring out what I'm going to write.
Okay. Because I read an article, essay from Kevin J. Anderson once, and he walks the mountains in California where he lives, and he dictates all of his writing, and then comes back, plugs it in, and has Dragon Speak put it into print.
Yeah, that sounds good, but that wouldn't work for me. I got to do all my figuring first. So
see it, yeah.
I'm a pantser, so I got to have a few things in my head before I start. I don't figure it all out. I'm not a plotter,
Okay.
but I do like to have a few, where's that monster going to show up? What's it going to look like? How is it different than the last one? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're working on a story, timeline question here, from initial concept to rough draft, do you do any research? How long does it take typically? Do you say this is good, I'm going to publish it, submit it, whatever you intended to do with it?
Well, like I said, I'm a pantser, so I'll write half a story quite often, and I'll do my research on the fly. Though I have lately been actually reading in certain areas because I wanted more in-depth material. But generally, if I got to know, well, what kind of gun would it be in 1903, I'll go look it up.
Okay.
And that's it. I'm not going to get out the gun books. Um, and then I'll leave that story, and it may sit for years before I finish it,
And you keep
or I
it up
may
here?
finish it right away.
Yeah.
Well, I just, since I'm a pantser, I get halfway and I go, well, what the hell happens now? And I have no idea. So I got to wait until I figure that out, at least enough to. So I have a nice pile of unfinished stories. I often wondered about Lee Brackett. She wrote the same way. She must have left like a stack of unfinished stories, but nobody ever finished them.
Oh, yeah.
So I would love to find that treasure trove. But anyway, when I go, they'll be in a big dusty corner somewhere, and you fly at her.
There'll be a big trunk that we'll find in the attic someday.
Yeah.
When you are writing, what assails your ears?
A lot of people listen to music when they write. I generally don't. I'll be honest. Usually, I can hear my wife watching TV in the background somewhere.
Okay.
She's always been very good to me. We've been married for almost 40 years, and she knows when to leave me alone to write. So
Nice.
I don't need loud, orchestral battle scene music. I just write. I'm always writing. So
So you can leave the door open and just normal house noises?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love coffee shops too. Coffee shops are great. Though I've gotten so arthritic, I can't write in a notebook anymore. So I'd have to bring a computer with me.
Okay. That one's always challenged me. I have a difficult time doing it in public unless I did it with NaNoWriMo once with a group of people when we were all doing it. So it was made me concentrate because it was not competition, but companionship,
Mhm.
I guess. But by myself, I find that very hard to write in public. It's a good skill to have.
Well, there's coffee. That's the main thing. Lots of coffee.
If you could follow the yellow brick road, would you?
I think I do all the time. I think that's what we do as writers.
Yep.
We are essentially, take an idea and follow it to its conclusion. Hopefully, it makes a good story.
How about if you could live in the yellow submarine, would you?
No, I'm kind of claustrophobic, I think.
That's getting to be the common answer. Have you been in a submarine?
Never.
It's not very comfortable for tall people.
Mhm.
All right, which of your own personal characters would you like to have as a best or close friend, and why?
Oh, that's fairly easy for me. That would be Arthur. Arthur is a werebear.
Yep.
He's I'd say my current character that I'm mostly writing about. Um, he's a pretty good guy to have for a friend. Ever in trouble, you know. I basically said, what would happen if you took Bjorn from The Hobbit and stuck him together with Conan? So, I mean, he can handle pretty much any situation. And he's a fairly good guy to hang out with, I too. So,
Where'd the werebear idea come from?
you mean originally
Yep.
or
Yep.
for me? Just from actually, I was watching the last Hobbit movie
Okay.
where the Eagles dropped Bjorn into a battle scene, and I went, "Oh yeah, I got to do that. That's the word came from."
Okay.
But I've written 4 novels now and almost a collection of short stories about him. So obviously, it's not just Conan and Bjorn. I found he's kind of embodies my child of the 70s. I mean, I was never really a hippie. I was too young to be an actual hippie, but I did grow up in that time period, and
Okay.
I think his attitude is really my attitude, which is live and let live, nature.
Okay. I like it. Definitely a good plug to pick those up. we will be including those pictures. I would imagine you'll talk of them more as well.
Yeah, I'll probably mention that at the end.
Okay. So do you read nonfiction much? And if you do, what
Oh,
do you read?
tons and tons. Right now, I'm reading Colin Wilson's Poltergeist,
Okay.
which I have to admit makes me laugh more than anything because Colin Wilson pretty much believed everything. But again, it's research. I'm working on an occult detective story where my detective is going to pretend to be a psychic. So I'm kind of just getting the feel for the 1910s, you know.
Right.
But I read all kinds of literary criticism. I'm always interested in what the critics think about the stories that I like. And quite often I disagree with them or I think they read too much into it.
Okay.
Um, I mean, as you know, I write a lot of blogs about nonfiction blogs. And I've always sort of, I guess, considered myself a lay critic. I don't want to be S.T. Joshi. Totally admire his work and many other writers, Jack Sullivan. But that's not what I want to do. I want to be the guy who's sitting there with another fan. I want to say, hey, have you read this Conan story? This is really cool because. And then I don't want to bore him to death with literary criticism. I want him to go, oh, yeah, I want to read that one too. I haven't read that one. That's
Right.
my approach.
So like a storyteller of literary criticism rather than the critic. Yeah.
I'm just a fanboy.
Yep.
I haven't, I have been to university, but my degree was not, I wish, in literary things. I'm a school teacher by trade.
Okay.
So, I learned all curriculum stuff when I'd much rather have been reading Sword and Sorcery, which is what I did. Don't tell the university. Yeah. Instead of reading Emma, which I was supposed to read, I was reading Fritz Leiber's Sword series. But anyway, that's just me.
I
I'm a
think
genre.
I think a lot of people stuck those little paperbacks in their textbooks. I was reading Louis Moore westerns in school.
Oh, love Louis. Love Louis. That man can write. Oh,
Well, good. We might hear of him again then. Titles. Are they difficult, easy? Do they come first, at the end?
well, it depends on what I'm writing. With this occult detective series, I've decided to make all the titles quotations from Shakespeare.
Okay.
So they're all very quotey titles. Generally, I don't know. Some stories it's so obvious. Like sometimes I'm writing a, a noir piece for my book collector series. He's an occult detective called Grow Rip, which is about ripping off a marijuana
Ah,
plantation, where, of course, the guy has been using mythos volumes to create basically Triffid like marijuana monsters. The title came first. It was like I heard that expression grow rip. Oh, that's so Elmore Leonard. I gotta use that. And of course the whole plot just came to me. And I
awesome.
love the Triffids, so yeah.
Yep.
That one's not done yet, but I'm working on
Uh, Blended right together.
it. Yeah.
I think you're making your own hybrid blend, if I understand that right.
And then other ones I fight over the titles. I got one that I really like that I just finished recently, which is French Canadian trappers versus Dracula in wolf form.
Okay.
And of
I
course, I
like
called it Wolves of Dracula at first, but that sounds too much like a Hammer movie.
it.
Right now, I've kind of settled on the Black Wolf, which is more like an actual Northern would be, which is
Okay.
it's a Northern, strange Northern. Um, they may get changed to something else.
Do you have a target for
Plus,
that?
there was the movie, The Voyage of the Demeter, kind of stole my idea.
Ah,
I had started this before I saw the film, so that happened.
that happens. Do you have a target for this, or are you just writing it for yourself right now?
Well, it's close to 10,000 words, and nobody buys 10,000 words, and nobody buys Strange Northern, so it'll be in a book.
Okay.
I'm putting it in a book called Strange Adventures, which is
Okay.
going to be Northerns and weird westerns.
Speaking of that, I meant to email you, so I'm going to add a question. How does one
Mm.
get into Swords of Fire?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, you don't have to answer that in public.
Yeah, we can talk about that after if you like.
All right. Breakfast time. I've, rest-
Breakfast.
I've restricted this to breads, so sorry.
Okay.
Waffles, French toast, pancakes, crepes, or bagels?
None of the above.
Okay, what's your breakfast?
Well, I'm diabetic, so whatever I eat has to be high fiber.
Yep.
So if it's, well, my wife makes some very good high fiber waffles
Okay.
and cakes. So I generally avoid the rest. It's too carby.
Yeah, exactly. To be fair, Adrian can only eat porridge, so he eats porridge every morning.
I love porridge.
His wife's
My
trying to get him
Scottish
to spice
muffins.
it up, but he's not adding anything. Just plain old gruel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm there. Little Canadian maple syrup, just a small amount. Little plug for the country there.
The renowned John O'Neill has done a panel with me,
Uh,
and he also plugged Canadian only
well,
maple
he's
syrup.
from that part of Canada, though. He's from the east. I'm out west. There's no maple syrup here.
Really? Okay. But it's
Poutine. Yeah.
you still only take Canadian though. So, all right. Would you live in any of the worlds you've created?
Well, when I think about that seriously, I'd say no. Let's be honest. Well, maybe a Victorian London-ish. I don't know. No, no. It'd be very uncomfortable. It would be right downright dangerous in most places.
Sure.
So no, I'm quite comfortable living where I live. I mean, quite often when I get together with other writers, I'm usually the furthest north. Pretty much anywhere I write, there's lots of monsters and
Yeah.
horror and killing and dying, and I don't really want to live in any of those places.
Uh, I don't blame you.
So
Everyone's
I would say I would like to go to one of my fantasy worlds and try a drink called Chima, which is my version of coffee.
oh,
So I wouldn't mind doing that.
you'd like to see
But
what it turned out like, huh?
yeah, just see what Chima really is. I probably wouldn't like it.
I like that. I'll have to think of new questions and stuff like that. Did you create anything in your world that you would like to go try? All right. I'm looking forward to this one. It's one of my favorite questions. Who do you think writes the characters you enjoy reading most?
Well, if you'd asked me that many years ago, I would have said Robert E. Howard, just and Edgar Rice Burroughs. But I have to admit, nowadays I read more mystery and westerns
Okay.
than I do of the genres I write in. And I'll be honest, I think mystery writers and western writers in general are much better writers than most science fiction writers.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know. I'm not sure what that means.
No, it probably is going to round out your storytelling. But if there's
Well,
a character that you want to read, who is it? I mean, or who's the author of it?
lately it's been Gideon, John Creasy's Gideon,
Okay.
who was basically a British version of Georges Simenon's Maigret. He's the
Okay.
leader of the police in England. That's kind of who I've been hanging out with lately. Though I will admit, I've been reading a lot of westerns too. So Peter Dawson, that man can write, and of course Louis. I'm a big fan of his Bowdry tales. So I don't know. There's so many. I mean, I really don't have favorites. That's my problem.
No, it's not a problem. But at a certain point, when there's a stack of books and there's one that you grab, there's a reason you grabbed it.
Perry Mason,
Sometimes it's the author, sometimes it's the character.
Earl Stanley Gardner, that man. Anytime I feel like I'm getting too wordy, I go read some Gardner and I snap out of it.
Okay.
I quite like Perry.
That is definitely a good example. See, that's a lot of insight into your writing right there. Okay, I teach a writing class, a creative character creation class once a month. If I invited you to come in, but you only got to say one piece, one sentence of writing advice, what would it be?
Remember that every character is you.
Okay,
How's that?
very good.
Do you want me to say
Expound.
more?
You can for the channel, yes. But in my class, you only
Just
get
that
that.
You got to make every character human.
Yep.
And the only human you really know is yourself. So I find it quite easy to write evil people because I have lots of evil inside of me. But, being a well adjusted human being, I don't really use any of it. But I mean, I can remember when I felt jealous or,
Yeah.
other perhaps less kind emotions. We've all gone through, I mean, we've all worked in the real world where the life is not always kind.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Very true. Very
dig
true.
inside, you'll find those things. They're there.
So we're going to follow that with, do you think it makes writing more difficult or somewhat easier if you, as the writer, feels emotion strongly?
Well, I would say that there's a certain point at which, when you're actually pantsing, if you're a pantser, you do need to feel that, yes.
Yeah.
You need to actually bring tears to your own eyes or go, damn, I'm good when I wrote that. But then you got to put that away, pull it out, and then revise it. And you need to be analytical. You need to be the cold editor and go back and say, did I really pull that off? Do I need to use that many exclamation points? Are those italics really too Lovecraftian? Should I maybe dial that back or amp that up? Or and then of course for me the best part of getting advice on that is my writers group. I have a writers group that meets every Sunday, and the boys can always tell me when I've hit the mark or missed the mark, or you know. And of course they teach me all kinds of things too.
How long has your group been going?
3 years.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, we're pretty regular.
Good.
I think we've produced quite a few novels out of that group, so it's working.
Very, very good. What is the best thing you've ever spent money on to further your writing?
Hmm. That one I was thought really long about because you can waste a ton of money. Like um, I spent somebody else's $1,000 to go to the Surrey Writers Conference. Wouldn't recommend it. Nothing against Surrey, it just wasn't what I needed. I think the best thing I ever spent money on was you're probably not familiar with Zellers. Zellers is a Canadian company that's gone now, but they were like the really low. They're like a Target, call it
Okay.
Target, and they used to have a bunch of books in there. And I went in there and I found a copy of Michelle West's book on writing advice. I got it for like $1.50. I can't even remember the title of it. I don't even have a copy of it anymore. But that was the book that told me stop just writing, for yourself and actually put yourself out there and try and sell something.
Okay.
And 6 months later, I was in Writer's Digest. So,
Nice.
yeah, so I would say that was $1.50 well spent. And if you ever come across that book, Michelle West,
At the right
check it out.
moment
It
in
may be what
time.
you need.
Yeah.
It's probably not the book I need right now.
No, but at that moment you did.
But it was the right book then and at the right price.
Yeah.
And it got me to make that jump. I needed to step forward and try it out myself out there.
Do you mind saying how old you were at that point?
Oh yeah, that would have been 1986.
Okay.
So I would have been 35.
And you made Writer's Digest in 6 months. That's pretty cool. What was that article?
That was about writing role playing games. So actually, I sold something to Chaosium first for Call of Cthulhu, and then I wrote an article about writing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. Life changing event from a simple little find.
You just got to put yourself out there.
Yep.
Find out what happens. Now, that being said, I recently spent a week or two putting out 100 different stories because I haven't been submitting to magazines for a long time. And I'm now sitting at about 50% rejection. So you got to put yourself out there, and it isn't always sweet.
Right. You hear that? I don't remember who did it. Somebody recently had an open call for stories that have been rejected a minimum of 3 times.
Oh, yes.
I sent one to that. We'll see what happens.
That is good.
So,
I,
all
I
right.
imagine we'll be rejected for a fourth time.
That would be funny. Yes. All right. We're hitting the 24-minute mark and we're doing really well here. So, this one might take you a little bit. I would like to know three of your favorite books as a child, and by child I'm saying pre-18, so
Mhm.
youth to middle age, middle school, whatever you want.
That's pretty easy. I think I can get that one pretty easily.
Okay.
First one was Jungle Tales of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs.
All right.
It was the book that made me a reader. Before that, I was a very reluctant reader. Didn't really like reading. I think I was more comic book oriented. Uh, but I was on a holiday, driving my mom out of her mind. I asked her if I could buy a copy when I saw that gorgeous Neil Adams cover. She grabbed at the chance, and after that, I became a reader and therefore eventually became a writer. So that one, number one. And of
Awesome.
course, Edgar Rice Burroughs is foundational for me.
Okay. I love it.
Then a few years later, a friend gave me a copy of Robert E. Howard's um, Moon of the Skulls, which was a old Centaur paperback that she actually got from the Scholastic Book Club at school, and she didn't like it. She gave it to me, and it was like, "Holy crap, this is so good!" And so I added Howard to Burroughs at that point.
That's
And
awesome.
then,
Scholastic. Got it at the Scholastic Book Fair.
yeah, and that one had a Jeff Jones cover on it, which was very moody. And
Yeah.
God, I love Solomon King.
I got one of
Um,
those on the shelf here. Yep. I got that set.
and then the third one was probably a couple of years later. I was sick at home, and I asked my mom if she could get me a book to read because I basically read them all. And she brought me Robert Silverberg's Downward to the Earth. Now, of course, that's nothing like Howard. It's nothing like Burroughs. That was the book that told me, you know what? There's more out there than just these two pulp writers. That
Okay.
was the one that opened my eyes to really all science fiction. At that point, I became a rabid fan of everything.
Okay.
So,
I don't know that one. I'll have to look
oh
that up.
yeah,
Okay.
that's like still one of my favorites. It is. It's a great book.
Cool. Okay. And you obviously continued reading all three of those authors then.
Yes, I have all of their works, pretty much all three of them. Still read them.
Did you?
So I want to just throw this one real quick.
Yeah.
I met Robert Silverberg at a convention,
Ooh.
and I could have said that the book I liked the best was Downward to the Earth because that would probably have been true. But I actually knew something about writers, being one at that point, that writers actually like to be complimented on their anthologies more than their own work. So I complimented him on his when I think it was Worlds of Wonder anthology, and I got a smile out of him, so I was happy. He wasn't expecting that.
That's a cool story, but I gotta ask. I had never heard that. You authors prefer that?
And people that do a lot of anthologies, yeah,
Okay.
they, I mean, Silverberg must get comments on his own works all the time, but the
True.
guy put out hundreds of books.
Telling
Well,
them that you liked an
dozens.
anthology means that you read his shorter work in someone else's material. So that's a good. Okay, I understand that. Huh. I have to remember that. Hey, what worries you most? Lava, quicksand, spider webs, or sharks?
Probably spider webs out of that. I mean, I don't live. I used to live near volcanoes when I was in BC, but I'm away from there now. And yeah, I do a lot of gardening, so
Yeah.
spiders.
What's the most common
So
spider out in Canada in your garden?
here in Alberta, black widows
Ooh,
are a thing.
dang.
So
Okay.
yeah, you go crawling under some kind of building, you can run into a rattlesnake or a black widow. You got to be careful.
I got the rattlesnakes, but I don't have the black widows. Dang. When you're done writing for the day, are you exhausted, ready for a hot bath and a nice drink, or are you ready to rumble and get out?
Mm, am I ever done?
Okay.
Actually, uh, my wife and I have, over the 40 years we've been married, have figured this out pretty well. I'm a morning person, so I usually give up writing till about noon. So after noon, we'll go and we'll do, gardening or whatever it is we want to do, and then we'll spend the evening watching British police dramas. So I'm a morning work kind of guy.
All right. Do you are you a tea drinker then?
No coffee.
Okay. All right.
Though I did actually discover Yorkshire tea recently when I Started watching the Heartbeat series. Which, anybody who's English, oh yeah, I know that one. Everyone else like what? And in the wintertime, I don't mind a cup of Yorkshire tea. But
Okay.
no, I'm a coffee guy. 6 cups a day.
I'm a coffee guy too, and I used to be 3 to 4 right away in the morning. But the last 2 months, I got knee and shoulder things, so I have this hour routine now in the morning, and I was just lamenting that I just can't roll out of bed and get a cup of coffee anymore. I got to do all this workout first. It's very challenging. Poor me. Uh, what is the most difficult thing you have ever written?
It really depends how you mean by difficult.
Challenging. What challenged you the most?
Hmm, I don't know. I mean, if we're talking just in terms of markets, probably that Writer's Digest article was sort of the scariest thing I ever had to write.
Hmm. And right from the
But
beginning. Dang. Okay.
I've been actually fairly lucky. I'm going to do a little bragging here. I sold a piece to Armchair Detective back when they still existed. Um, and I was just so happy to see when it came out that they basically didn't change anything.
Oh, wow.
So that was like, oh, wow, I actually can write something that nobody needs to edit. Because, I was still pretty early on. I was still learning. But hmm, maybe the hardest thing lately is actually writing a complete novel.
Okay.
I'm very much a short story writer. So most of my books are, even if they kind of look like a novel, I write them kind of like the old pulp writers did it, in pieces.
Okay.
So with the Arthur novels, though, I actually sat down. I didn't actually create a plot. I didn't plot it all out. All I did was I created an arc so that I knew that at certain chapters I had to hit certain points in that arc.
Nice.
And so all four of the Arthur novels are actually complete short novels. And then they follow the format. I mean, you can go halfway and you can find the halfway point, where in most movies, TVs, novels, the hero has that right sort of inward moment where they go, "Oh, now's when I got to kick everybody's ass and win."
Yeah.
Right? And just go to any movie, go to the halfway point. You'll say I'm right.
Oh, yeah.
Screenwriters, but novels have that too.
Yep.
So I have my three gates or certain things, and then I put in certain points where I have to have bosses for the gamers.
Yep.
You got to have a boss and then a big boss and all that. And alongside that runs the romantic, the arc.
Right.
As you're going to meet the female romantic character and so on. And that's all. I don't. Then I sit down and I start writing it. I have an idea of what it's going to be about. I'm no lead child. I can't do it totally without prep, but kind of written the same way. And that I think maybe that's the biggest challenge I've had lately.
And then now that you're at four, is that a good rhythm? You're liking it, and it's pounding out for you each one easier, maybe?
No, actually, it's getting harder.
Okay. Interesting. Is
Well,
the stories
I did the first
themselves
four so quick
okay?
that people were accusing me of AI. Are you Chat GPT write these? No, I was writing one a month, and
Yeah, and who's to
then
say you didn't have them all ready to go before you released the first one too?
I did.
Yeah,
I made a point of that,
yeah.
and actually, I don't recommend that. I thought that as a strategy. I'm going to put these on Amazon, and there'll be three of them, and everybody will buy three, and that worked up to a point. But looking back at it, I don't know if that was actually the best way to go.
Okay. Now, are the
Yeah,
stories
I think so.
themselves following an arc? I know each one is, but is there
Yeah,
a whole
each
arc?
one is complete,
Okay.
but each one has an arc. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I grabbed the first one. I have not read it yet.
Well,
It's in my mega long.
enjoy it.
Yeah.
Wait till you need a really fast, good, exciting read. That'll be the one to read.
All right. I will keep it in mind. If you could write anybody else's character from any medium, would you and who?
Wow, that's a hard one.
Andy
At first,
Samberg.
I thought Tarzan. I read a Tarzan novel, but then when I actually thought about that, there really isn't anything there that I actually want to say.
Okay.
So probably, not.
Okay.
Then I started thinking comic books and Hellboy. I love Hellboy.
Ooh.
I've always considered Mike Mignola kind of my shadow self. We're about the same age. We both started off drawing comics. He became wonderfully successful. I didn't, but hey, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, Hellboy kind of is tempting.
That's awesome. That's funny because I feel that way about Brett Favre.
Okay.
We both had children with the same names, and we actually had friends in common, and we were the same age. So, uh,
Actually, I remember seeing a Mignola illustration he did for a gaming magazine really early in his career, and it is awful.
ooh,
At that point, I was better than he was.
interesting.
But then he went and did a whole bunch of practice and got better at what he's doing. And I sat on my ass. And of course, here we are today. Actually, I went to art school. And in art school, I realized it was easier to write stories than it was to draw them. And I think that's where I made my kind of dividing line.
Well, I just saw. Was it on the announcement for shoot your third book that I just mentioned, the anthologies, where Mike's got the cover, but you released a piece of art you did for the interior.
I do have a book coming out called Monster.
Yeah, Monster. That's what it
From
was. That's
Online,
right.
yeah.
Yeah,
It has
yeah.
an illustration on the title page. Is mine.
Oh, okay, just the one. You don't have multiple in there. Okay,
Well, I thought about maybe doing a bunch, but I'm a very lazy artist.
monstrous. Okay, I'm going with Hellboy. I like that. All right,
Yeah, that would be great.
this one is 10 first thoughts. I'm throwing out a word, and I want your first reaction.
Okay.
Battle axe,
Arthur,
sleuth,
the book collector.
dystopian,
Stuff I don't write.
green,
Money. That's not true. Canada, we have very little green money.
danger,
Will Robinson.
whistle.
Oh, M.R. James.
Ooh, Edgar,
Rice.
spider,
Man.
uh, legs,
Crazy Legs.
and hummingbird.
I saw one in my backyard.
I got a feeder out there. I like my hummingbirds. All right. Do you have a favorite quote, and will you share it with us?
Hmm. Thought about that one too. I don't really have favorites. So I will choose one and comment on it if you
Okay.
like.
Yes.
I don't know, it was my favorite. And that, of course, is Lovecraft's famous fear of the unknown quote.
Okay.
I'm sure most people know it. I
I'm
probably should have prepped for that and brought it with me, but
I'm including them in here. There'll be a screenshot of it. So
yeah.
actually, if you don't mind sending it to me in the format you like, or I mean in the wording you like.
Uh, the fear of the unknown being, of course, I think the most interesting kind of horror writing. I wrote about this in a blog once about Jeff Gonzalez's Survivor, which is a kind of a splatter horror,
Okay.
and there's no real monsters in it. And this is again another one of those moments for me when I read it was when this is not what I do. I am not a horror writer. I am a monster writer.
I remember
And I
that.
think that goes back to
Yep.
Lovecraft and that sense of the unknown. Monsters generally are the unknown
Yep.
embodied, right?
Yep.
In science fiction, you could be exploring a new galaxy. What's out there? We don't know. Oh, it's horrible, hideous robot monsters. We just figured it out, right?
Yep.
Or in fantasy, we're going to go into the forest. What's in there? Oh, it's the Lich of the King, whatever. We want to know. We want to answer the unknown. And then in horror stories that I like, sort of the weird tale school, Jules de Grandin pulls open the door and there's the monster.
Yep.
And then he goes on for an hour explaining everything what happened.
Took a little of the mystery away, but yeah, I'm with you there. The splatter. I don't read that stuff either.
Well, it makes me uncomfortable. It just kind of freaks me out, which is the point of it. And if that's what you like, I like to sleep at night though.
Yeah. Well, I come from a background where some of that stuff is I've seen, and I don't need to read any more about it. So I don't I don't enjoy those as entertainment. Discounting yourself. Who is your favorites? And I know you don't like the word favorites, but visual artists. What works move you, and who are they by?
Well, I can mention so many artists, but I think the foundational artist for me, and you're going to hear this one a lot, Frank Frazetta.
Yes, sir.
Um, he, when Mike does a cover for an Arthur book or Swords of Fire, in my head, I'm going, how Frazetta is it? Make it more Frazetta. So when it comes to sword and sorcery,
Yep.
Frazetta. I mean, I like Jeff Jones and I like lots of other people, but it starts with Frazetta.
All right. Well, I'm throwing Jones in there too because I like throwing up for our viewers. All right.
Well, if I was gonna go in another direction for horror,
Okay.
I would pick Harry Clark.
Harry Clark.
Harry Clark, the 1920s illustrator,
Okay.
is so ornate and fascinating, and I love him.
I don't know him off the top of my head. Is that with an E at the end, Clark?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. I will look him up.
And he's mostly in the public domain now, so
Okay.
I
Very cool. Well, the last question is, are you trying to tell or share anything in your writing?
hmm, that's a good question, and I imagine most psychiatrists would disagree with me.
Yep.
Uh, um, I'm going to tell a story that kind of answers this question. When I was 12, I remember going to my library, and I lived in Dawson Creek, which is in northern parts, and they had a library there, and in that library they had a copy of Edgar Rice Burroughs' The Mastermind of Mars,
Okay.
with I'm probably saying his name wrong, Gino de Chile, or however you say his name, the Italian guy that did those early Barsoom covers. And I remember looking at it and just freaking out.
Huh.
I was just freaking out because here was the most perfect cover story thing I could ever want to read. And it sounds stupid, but it moved me deeply. And so I guess if there's anything I've ever wanted to convey in my writing, would be that feeling.
Okay.
I'm hoping when someone reads what I write, that I'm hitting that button. I mean, I'm not going to make them cry. I'm not, I don't think I'm as good a writer as that I could actually make a 12-year-old cry. But I mean, I was literally crying. It was just like, here's this most perfect thing. I want that. And of course, later on, I got that book and all the other ones, and you get more and more and more, and that feeling kind of gets dulled down for some reason. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I was 12. Whatever. But that is what I hope my writing does. When you read it, I hope you feel some of that excitement of when you were a kid.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you. Very personal. And that wraps up our questions. 42 and a half.
Ooh.
We did well.
Do I get a prize for doing it in 42?
24 and 42, folks. That was well done. All right. GW Gary, this is your chance. Now you get to expound to us about 3 C's. Something cold, something current, and something coming.
All right, let's do the cold first. Yeah, we'll do this one. Okay, so here's a copy of Arthur number 4.
That's cold?
This is cold in the sense that I've already written it and moved on.
All right.
The first 4 novels are there. What I'll say for the coming, though, is the next book isn't actually a novel. It's a collection of short stories called The Beacon House and Other Young Arthur Stories. So right now, instead of writing novels, I'm working on short stories about him and just having some fun filling in some of his background and doing some shorter pieces.
Is there a cover for that collection yet?
No.
Okay.
Mike has not, and we haven't quite decided if we're going to use the same, because we used a template cover. They always look the same. And that I asked him for that. I wanted it to look actually like the old Cimarron Western covers.
Oh yeah.
And I
Okay.
think he did a pretty good job.
Consistent. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. He might choose to do something different, but he'll probably have one of these.
Okay.
So that's what's coming. I mean, we are, of course, working on lots of other books, including I guess my upcoming will be, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm currently writing that one. So the one that's going to be on sale later this month is Swords of Fire 3.
Okay.
And of course, I've got a copy of Swords of Fire 2. I haven't got 3 yet because it's not out in paperback yet. But I will send you a picture, or you may already have the cover for that.
Yep.
It's got a nice orangey cover like this one.
Yep.
And it's a little different. The first 2 books we had David Hardy and C.J. Birch and
Ehart was in one of them.
yeah, Michael Ehart, and then Mike did one and I did one. This time around we did a little bit different. So this time around he and I both have one.
Okay.
He has actually half of the book, and you'll like this because you're a Sartoga and Poet fan.
Yeah.
Half of the book is a Sartoga and Poet story called The Fall of the Golden City.
Half. The
And
book.
if you're a Sartoga fan, you're going to love it. It's quite awesome.
Cool.
The other half of the book is a story about a new character called Braddock the Slayer. And Mike has actually used his own name for that one. He's not Jack McKenzie.
Ah, interesting.
And I have a piece about a character, a sword swinging young lady named Malice.
Ooh.
And so she's in there. And then the last piece is actually who we dedicated the book to. Was I had a cousin who passed away about 6 years ago.
Okay.
And he had this great idea for a story and he never wrote it. So I finally wrote it up. It's kind of a pirate, sword and sorcery, kind of Lovecraftian piece.
Okay.
And so we put a pen name on that one because it's myself and my cousin.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
That's what's in this one.
That's cool of you to have done that and to retain that for 6 years. So.
Yeah, well, as you know, I write half a story and then I leave it.
Well, you said monster too, so would that be a current or a coming?
Yes, that's coming out as well, same time.
Okay.
And that's my first collection of nonfiction from the blog, which I've been very slow to get to. The blog's been putting out about 300,000 words a year for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I had yet to put out one book. So I finally got off my butt and did that. And I'm hoping to do that on a fairly regular basis.
Okay.
See how the first one does.
Very cool. We learned a lot about you today. Thank you very much for spending time with 24 and 42, where we got to learn about your universe, your everything. And we look forward to sharing this. This is an exciting program. I like learning about y'all.
All right. Thank you for having me on.
My thanks to G Dub for not only sharing everything about his life and universe with 24 and 42, but also for the years of articles he shared with all of us. As a longtime fount of information, history, and analysis of the heroic genres, what he's shared today is just a hint of all he's spread from his Rage Machine website. Be sure to check out the info below, and please give his work some love with reads and reviews. Until next time, this was 24 and 42.